It's your show.
Hey, you know what? We're going to start with reviews because this was one week where I watched most of both Friday shows, and for the most part, they weren't terrible.
I hate what?
They weren't as terrible as usual.
I don't know what you were watching.
Well, let's find out. Let's start with SmackDown.
Well, there you go. Because here's the thing. SmackDown was not as terrible as SmackDown usually is. I will agree with you there. Rampage was worse than Rampage usually is because of 3 reasons. Number 1, it was twice as long. Number 2, the matches were garbage. And number 3, I actually had to watch it because you made me. You said, oh, you got to see Action Bronson. You got to see the other part of the Grand Slam.
I didn't make you. You indicated you were going to watch it.
Because you gave me that look. See? Just like the one you're giving me right now.
Right now, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about SmackDown because we already reviewed the first segment on the experience, which was Sami Zayn being accepted by the Bloodline with a brand new t-shirt they could sell.
And actually that segment alone made the show kind of halfway worth watching because it was long as the first 20 minutes. Everybody was great. You got Heyman, you got Sammy, you got Roman. You know, you got all the people you need to have.
As much as I'm not a fan of all the talking and the way it's done in wrestling, I'd be okay with Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman being the hosts of SmackDown and opening and ending every episode with a 15-minute segment of them in the ring just doing whatever the hell they do.
Yes, just anything.
But after that opening segment, we had a women's title match, Liv Morgan versus someone you've been asking about, Lacey Evans.
Yes, we did. And boy, howdy. Who did Lacey Evans piss off? That's my question. Because I don't know that I have seen a more talented female performer booked in such ridiculous, shitty ways ever from any company. And what are you supposed to think about her? They had her do those promos. Again, part of this, I'm sure, was Vince and some weird Vince idea that he had. They had her do the promos as the abused child and the military hero and the determined young woman, which all led up to her being a heel because for some reason. And then she's great as a heel. But now they're using her as fucking cannon fodder for this Liv Morgan experiment of trying to make people believe that Liv Morgan is now or ever has been or should be a professional wrestler. So Lacey Evans, she looks great. She's got the size. She looks like a fucking athlete. Her work looks pretty good. She's got tremendous heel attitude and great body language when she's snatching the girl by the hair and taunting her and the fucking trash talking. And she did what she could in this to make Liv Morgan look like she belongs somehow in the fucking ring. I'm not saying that she accomplished that, but she did what she could. I can see Lacey Evans as the heel that's being presented here without the weird backstory, being on top of the female roster versus Charlotte or versus Bianca or versus Becky or versus Rhea or any of the, the upper echelon women. And, again, they had a goddamn okay match from Lacey Evans' side. I can't see anything in Liv Morgan whatsoever. She's small and dainty and girly, and they're trying to make her extreme enough for Ronda Rousey, which is where this finish comes in. But at one point, however, I just got a kick out of this. Lacey Evans has the Cobra Clutch. And Liv Morgan just starts swinging wildly, slapping at her face above her head. And she just tatered Lacey Evans right in the nose. And Lacey just jerked her down and hit a couple fucking forearms like, fuck you, and a little stiff heel and a stiff kick. Like, Jesus Christ, settle down. And Lacey even did the head scissors and the push-ups. The old 70s heel bit. I haven't seen any kind of goddamn heel personality like that in ages. I'm in love with her, is what I wrote. I'm in love with Lacey Evans. And as soon as I wrote that, Lacey rolls out on the floor and gets a kendo stick out from under the ring and takes it in the ring. And the referee just stares at her doing it. It's not a no DQ match. At least they haven't said that. Again, in front of the referee, she swings the kendo stick. Liv Morgan ducks and tries to and fails to give her a code breaker. It's some fucked up kind of code breaker where she didn't hit it right. Lacey has to stagger to the ropes. Liv Morgan hits her awkward finish that never looks good. 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, my God. Not only who does these finishes, but if you have to put Liv Morgan over, you can't find somebody more useless to do it than a potential star you've got that now you apparently have no idea how to use here. And then the babyface, Liv Morgan, wears Lacey Evans, the heel, out with the kendo stick to show that she is extreme enough for Ronda Rousey, and then puts her on a table on the floor. It sets up the table, puts Lacey on the table. Lacey lays there while Liv Morgan goes to the top rope and jumps off and ass drops Lacey Evans through the table. And I wrote, Jesus fucking Christ, ridiculous. So now in the first segment, in the girls' match of the most professional company we've seen in a regular match, not even no DQ, we've seen kendo sticks and a girl coming off the top rope and putting somebody through a table on a concrete floor. And the wrong person won. What were your thoughts on this travesty?
Remember, I insisted you watch this match because I found it fascinating.
Yeah.
It came on right after that opening segment, which I loved, and I'm watching live. And Lacey Evans is in the ring. No big introduction, no big coming to the ring with her march or whatever she used to do, nothing. She's just in the ring, looking like she's ready for a fight. I said, okay, I haven't seen her. We just talked about where is she? What is she doing? She was a Vince favorite. Is that something that's hurt her, like it's hurt Austin Theory? So then I start watching this, and I'm like, she ain't bad. Yep. I'm so happy to hear you come to the same conclusion. I'm watching this, I'm like, she's pretty good. And the kendo stick thing, I don't blame her. Just because it's, she's doing it.
No, I'm not blaming. The point is that I'm blaming whoever comes up with these fucking finishes and what in the world are they thinking?
So I knew Liv Morgan would win just because they haven't used Lacey Evans at all. Now they're not going to belt her on TV. But when the post-match happened, that's when I was like, oh my God, Jim has to fucking watch this. What happened to Lacey Evans? This is what happened. She's been off TV. They bring her back. She loses to Liv Morgan, and then I've never seen another woman have this happen to her on TV. She gets just put through a table. And that's it. Will we see her again? That's the question. Really talented, though. Jeez.
Yes. So, again, I have no idea. But meanwhile, on the other side of the street, where they need good women wrestlers, they probably wouldn't think about hiring her in a million years. Anyway, this was a recurring piece of business in the entire program that Death Row is hosting a party in the back and Street Profits are there. And
Hit Row, not Death Row.
Hit Row, hit me. Jump back, gotta kiss myself one time.
Hit Row.
All right, well, it's death to ratings, whatever. There's a party in the back and it's lit like a lounge and everybody's drinking out of their red cups. And at this point, one of the Street Profits sang something for some reason and made Harley start barking. She's just sleeping in the floor. I'm watching this show, and all of a sudden, he hit that note, and she started barking, and nothing else had happened. So he's got a voice that can call dogs. Anyway, every time that we talk about God, if they didn't have a fight in the back every show 3 or 4 times, that it would actually mean something when they did one right with somebody that can actually do it. They actually finally did that. Sami Zayn in the back getting insulted by Ricochet and Mosh Pit. And they're talking about his new shirt, and they're knocking him. And all of a sudden, Solo busts in and kicks the shit out of both of these guys, bounced them off the garage door. It looked surprising. It was out of nowhere. It looked good. He kicked the shit out of them. Now, maybe we've got something with Solo. He was serious about this. It wasn't one of the shit beatings or the, stagey, phony looking fights, especially. Remember the one the Cucamonga kids had, the Harley Boys over there on AEW, when their father supposedly got busted open and it was also phony. Or remember the time there was another one with
Nick Jackson under the door. I know where you're going to go.
Yes, the garage door that he was holding down on himself. But anyway, Solo looked good here. And then they did a package on the Usos with Heyman doing the voiceover, praising them, obviously. And this made them look like bigger stars than the booking does. They're soon to be the longest reigning tag team champions in WWE history. That's a great record, but if you've watched what they've done, they get, we've mentioned it 20 million times. They beat the other tag teams, and then whoever Roman's program is with beats them up 1-2. So it's just, anyway, but the package was great. New Day versus Mansoor and Massey. Everybody started this match out, even the girl Dupree, I can't remember what her name is, doing comedy of various kinds. Maxine. The only talent that was involved in this whole thing that I would actually watch on purpose is fucking LA Knight, and he was standing out on the floor and he's ruined. So did I miss anything?
I think he ended up storming off. Almost.
We can only hope for a shoot.
Yeah, we'll see where they go. I mean, if it's Triple H in charge and he's the one who signed him to developmental to begin with, maybe he realizes how misused this is, but they don't want to just end it right away. I watched a little bit of it because I found it humorous seeing Mansoor and Mansoor, whatever their names are, fucking selling while wearing makeup or whatever the fuck's going on there.
I think one of them is a Mansoor.
Other than that, no, I didn't really pay too much attention. New Day, one of my least favorite tag teams ever, so I try not to watch their stuff.
You mentioned, I wonder, we've talked about people leaving, storming out of the locker room, right? Having an issue, and Austin did it that one time before Raw, and, blah, blah, blah. But I wonder, has anybody ever left directly from the ring? Just said, in the middle of it, just said, fuck it. You know what? Fuck this. Fuck working here.
Yes.
Fuck. Who?
Jeff Hardy.
Well, no, he did. He just went to the back, though.
No, didn't he walk right out of the building?
Well, yeah, but he didn't. No, he walked out into the crowd, but he didn't. Nobody said that he left his bags and possessions and belongings in the locker room. He left the ring that way. But I assume he went back to get his goddamn shoes.
That must have been awkward. I left my socks. Sorry.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be great if old LA Knight just looked around and said, you know what? I want to be a wrestler. I've done this for 15 years or whatever the fuck, and they've got me out here in the middle of this shit. Fuck it. And just climb the barricade, out the front door, hail a fucking cab, just go home. Just say, fuck you. He would be the first one I can think of in a while that would have a goddamn good reason to. Just look around him and realize, my God, look at what I'm doing. Anyway, Jack Briscoe left from the Newark airport, and that's close. That's probably the closest thing to this particular angle that you would find yourself where you just look around and go, why the fuck am I here, and how the fuck quick can I get out of it?
Trying to think, who are the suspects who would be the people that would just walk out? Terry Funk, same thing as Briscoe. He at least left a note, and it wasn't just in the middle of a match. Now, Eddie Gilbert would walk out in the middle of a match. Did he do that? I'm trying to remember.
No, I don't think he did, but I think one night he had a match with Lawler in Memphis, and he was the booker. And somewhere or another, they had a fucking, I wasn't there that night, but Jerry Jarrett called me afterwards. They had some kind of argument, and they decided Eddie wasn't going to be the booker anymore, and he left, and we came in to do the angle with the Fabs and Lawler and Dundee, whatever, for 6 weeks. And on our last night in, when they had beat us, and Lawler and Dundee in the ring with their hands up, Eddie Gilbert fucking passes by us on the way back to the locker room. He hits the ring and throws a fireball at Lawler, and they start the program over again. What the fuck? Was he just out in the parking lot for 6 weeks? Jerry Jarrett had called me after and said, well, Eddie's not the booker anymore. What were y'all going to do? And I told him, he said, okay, well, let's keep doing that. But no, Eddie's not coming back. And 6 weeks later, he comes right back, throws a fireball, and boom. And
that's the epitome of 90s Memphis right there. That story sums up an entire fucking decade.
But anyway, so they did something else good on SmackDown, briefly. Did you notice that here comes Braun Strowman, the big entrance, the big returning star? He has been presented as a main event guy. People know who he is. And they've got him going to the ring at the top of the 9 o'clock hour. So if anybody's switching around, that's an old Vince-ism. But then, if they were switching around, they'd see Braun Strowman in the ring and go, okay, let's see what. And here comes Otis and Gable. And the announcers were trying desperately, underlined desperately, to list Otis's real amateur wrestling credentials, talk about his size, talk about he's got goddamn, a pocket nuke in his pocket. They were trying to give him credibility and credentials that he should be in the ring with Braun Strowman, hoping it would make people overlook the way he's been booked since he's been there. A simpleton that has been made to look like a comedy figure and is wearing a T-shirt that says shush across the front of it. They put in a single match with their big man among monsters, or monsters among men, or monsters among whatever the fuck he is. So, meanwhile, Strowman is wearing a T-shirt and red sweatpants. Not even a T-shirt. He's just wearing a fucking gym shirt that's 5 sizes too big, and sweatpants, and Otis is in a shush T-shirt. It looked like goddamn bum fights. And, I mean, Strowman is limited. We've talked about this, but some of his shit gets over, but not against Otis is 5'8", right? Even though he's 360. So the fucking deal is they're trying to act like it's giant versus giant, but Otis is still a foot shorter and has been presented as a comedy figure. Strowman opens up at the bell, beals him, and then hits him with a drop kick, and he got up as far as a 5'8" guy's stomach for the drop kick. Maybe somebody will tell Braun not to do the drop kick unless he can actually get up there like Big Show used to do. So then Gable's on the outside. He foiled the ring run around, and Otis gets Strowman from behind, gets a little bit of heat on the floor, and then gets him back in the ring. And you can tell that both Otis and Braun Strowman doesn't know how to sell or has been put in a position to sell that much. And after a few things, it was kind of awkward, flat-footed, plodding heat because Otis ran out of things to do to Braun and was just clubbing him with some broad arms, and Braun didn't really know how to fucking sell it. And then finally Braun hits a spine buster, goes out to the floor, hits a tackle on Otis. He goes over the desk, throws Gable over the barricade. All this is fine. You're making your monster. And then did an awkward spot with Otis, and Otis slammed him. Otis slammed him. I repeat, Otis slammed Braun Strowman. John Studd got 5 years out of teasing taking a body slam. And this comedy mid-card guy slams Braun Strowman. And then hit a Vader bomb and got a 2 count. And this is not as good as it sounds on description here, because it was rough. And then, yes, and Harley even just said, ugh. And then Otis missed a diving headbutt, and Strowman hit the powerbomb, which did get a huge pop because you got a 360-pound fat guy being powerbombed. 1, 2, 3. I feel it's an indictment of the current state of the roster and the booking of Otis, if that's all they have to put Braun Strowman over on national television. Because this was rough.
And he just got back. Right now is the time that you want to do something really big with him, so that he seems bigger than ever before, right when he came back, as opposed to now he's just another guy doing stupid shit on the show already.
And again, a smaller, because Strowman is badly limited, and he's that big, so that's not a bad thing, and it's not his fault. That's his calling card. He's that big. He's not a good wrestler, and he's limited in what he can do, but he's that big. So get a smaller guy that's experienced that can accentuate that to put him over. Don't make him competitive with a guy that you've been doing comedy skits with for the last fucking 6 months. It has a stupid look on his face and looks like if fucking Plowboy Frazier and that midget that I saw pictures of him with one time had kids. Anyway, should we move on?
Yeah.
To folks, just remember, it's fire season. Don't set forest fires. Drew McIntyre comes out to do a promo, and he's talking about Karrion Cross, and he challenges Karrion Cross to a strap match at Extreme Rules. So now they're going to do a pay-per-view with a bunch of matches that have no rules when all of their goddamn regular matches pretty much have no rules. But it was a good promo. Drew McIntyre looks good. He's got the size, etc. Blah, blah, blah. But again, as soon as he makes the challenge, instantly the music plays. Here comes Scarlett to the ring. And is it not now... I get modern wrestling fans, I hear them all the time saying, well, back in the old days of wrestling, it was so silly or predictable or phony. Look at, like, I don't know what they're looking at. But isn't it now a tired, old, modern wrestling trope that as soon as somebody issues a challenge or mentions a name, their music is cued and here they come?
It's the most tired of them all, I would argue.
And you didn't see that in territory wrestling. You know why? Because it was fucking phony. And it's still phony. It looks phony. It's too perfect. It's a setup cue. Let people storm down with no music at an inopportune time. It gets people into... Never mind. Anyway, they can't listen. So when Scarlett comes to the ring, Karrion Cross, imagine this, attacks Drew McIntyre from behind. How many times have we seen this just in the 2 programs on Friday? Somebody comes down the one way, you're looking at them, somebody comes the other way. That was a great deal too back in the day until it happened 6 times a week. So there they get in a fight. And McIntyre posts Karrion Cross and then puts the strap on Cross's wrist and then gets the other end and starts whipping the bejesus out of Cross. And Cross sold it big. And okay, we've got some interest in a strap match going on here. And as Cross is selling, Scarlett rolls in and blocks his prone body like, no, stay away. And Drew McIntyre is like, why I oughta, should I? But he pauses, and she's fumbling with something. And she tries. What the point of it was that she was going to fire a fireball at Drew McIntyre's face, and I assume the plan was to hit him with it and burn him, but it went straight past him. And this unless it was Karrion Kross and Scarlett's idea to do this in this fashion, unless they brought the equipment, they were not well served by the production department or whoever set this thing up. Because, for one thing, they used a palm gun. And I tried one of those out one time in the 80s at home at my house before I used it in the ring. And they don't work. Not for this application. A palm gun, it's a thing that you slip your middle finger in it and you've got it in your palm. And instead of, some of them use flash paper, I believe, but there's also a flash type of cotton. And I don't mind going into detail on this because it's not been used in wrestling for the reason I'm about to explain, and I don't know why they tried to use it now. But if you put the wad of flash cotton in this thing, it's a little barrel, and when you press a button with your thumb, it's supposed to both light the flash paper or flash cotton and fire it out where the ball comes out of the barrel of this thing that's hidden in your hand, right? The problem is, first of all, even if it works right, it's projecting the flash paper or flash cotton too fast. The fireball goes too fast. It goes up in the air and it fucking dissipates quickly because flash paper burns up quickly, especially the tighter that it's wadded. Loose means bigger fireball. Tight means smaller fireball. So after the initial time I burned Garvin with the fireball, that was the first time I'd ever thrown one. And Dusty showed me how to do it. Then I saw one of these the palm guns at a magic shop, and I got one to bring it home and try it to see if it'd be easier, and that's where I determined that no, it actually would be worse, and it doesn't work. The way to make the fireball not only big, but not go 100 miles an hour and go in the direction that you want it is to have the flash paper, as I mentioned, balled loosely. You've got the fucking source of flame, usually a Bic lighter, in your other hand, and all you've got to do is flick that lighter and touch just one corner of that paper to the flame and turn your hand up and open, and the flame naturally rises up, unless you've got a strong fan or something, which is why you have to put it under the person's face and let it go upwards into it. Sheik did it coming out of the waistband of his tights and always made the up motion like that. Same way I did it with Garvin and other people that I've done it with. Same way that anybody that's ever hit a fireball hit the target. That's the way you do it. So she didn't have a Bic lighter. She didn't have loosely wadded flash paper. She didn't do it barehanded, and she didn't fucking floosh it up like that. She used a palm gun that she activated with her fucking thumb, and it shot the goddamn... If you slow-mo it, Brian, you could actually see the white wad of flash cotton come out past his head before it burst into flame. My slow-mo on my DVR catches the moment that it burst into flame, and it was already a foot past his head. So anyway, the point is, unless Scarlett is an experienced magician or master of prestidigitation or legerdemain, somebody gave her that, and they ought to be horsewhipped, because that was doomed to failure from the beginning. But since that's what happened, it came out so fast, and those are hard to aim also to begin with. So they just... McIntyre realizes he can't sell it. Cross has to get back on him. They get back. They call an audible. McIntyre hits a spine buster, turns his back to Scarlett. She nut shots him. And then Cross chokes him out. And then while he's got the choke on him, he promos him at the same time. And in the last little bit of adding insult to injury, he's got the fucking, this has been going on. And it stopped when the girl got in the ring. And then it started again after the fireball was missed. And then it fucking, now he's choking the guy and talking to him. Not one referee, not one security guard, not one friend of Drew McIntyre's, not one babyface. Nobody even rang a bell. Nobody, the announcers were like, well, they shouldn't be doing this. Well, nobody was trying to stop them. So they're trying to give this guy a fucking push, Karrion Kross, and he's got the look, and he's got the girl, and his work, I guess, ain't bad. We've seen a bit of him. They're trying to give him a big push, but this was a goddamn clusterfuck. And I know sometimes I've seen things happen with, especially with the fire. You know, whether the Bic lighter gets wet because you're sweaty, or the flash paper gets wet because you're sweaty, or, you know, the Iron Sheik in Evansville that night to Jimmy Hart. Jimmy, it won't strike. It won't strike. But this was just, no, it didn't need to be this way. Had nobody in that building ever done this and know how it's supposed to be done? Or did they just read about it on the internet? Your thoughts?
To answer that question, who in the building would have any experience with this?
Well, then why'd they try to do it?
They do lots of stupid stuff.
You know what I've never done? I've never mixed nuclear materials to make an atomic bomb, so I'm not going to fucking try.
Without knowing what preparation was put into this, is there a chance they did try it and it did work, and then, you know, you get in the ring, you're on live TV, all of a sudden there's extra sweat, whatever it is, it didn't work properly?
That's possible. I don't really know. It couldn't possibly have been as picturesque as a hand-thrown fireball would be using that apparatus. So I don't know why they would do that, but even if it did work at first, maybe they don't know what it's supposed to look like. If it worked at first, it would have shot the fireball at like 100 miles an hour into his face, and it would have been gone in a second, and a lot of people would probably have missed it. That's if it worked right with using that apparatus.
Did Lawler ever miss? Did Lawler ever miss with his fireball?
Well, if he got the fireball off, it didn't miss. And I mean, I've seen the Sheik, because he did it so often. Every once in a while, Sheiks would go sideways, but he would usually make such a big ball that it would be close enough for rock and roll with whatever anyway. But I've said with Lawler, that's the time he and the Iron Sheik were going back and forth with the fireballs, right? And fucking... that was the one night. No, it was in Louisville at Jimmy Hart and the First Family were holding Lawler. And Sheik had the fucking paper and had the lighter, and that's where he's going, Jimmy, it won't strike. It won't strike. He had the paper, but the lighter had gotten wet. So the next night, they're in Evansville, and this in the finish, Lawler's going to hit Sheik with the fireball. Well, his goddamn paper got wet. And the paper wouldn't fucking... So then they'd already made the promos for the next week in Evansville where Lawler talked about burning the Sheik, giving him a taste of his own medicine the previous week. So what Lawler did was he threw Sheik out on the floor and he grabbed his lighter and he took him all around every side of ringside, flicking the Bic in his face while fucking Sheik sold, oh my God, it burns. To show everybody that he'd burned it.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Well, quick thinking though, right? Because the interviews we're going to play.
What are the people at ringside thinking he's chasing him with a big lighter?
Oh, he had him in a headlock, and he was taking him in front of everybody, flicking the Bic in his face, and screaming, hit the burns, hit the burns, hit the burns. Yeah. But, I mean, things like that. I mean, you know, sometimes you go to hit a guy with a bottle, break a bottle over his head, and the bottle will break too soon. One of the most famous was when Jimmy Valiant rolled into the ring on Lawler and Harley Race in December of 77 in the NWA title match. They'd gone 60 minutes to a draw the week before. And at the end of the 60 minutes, Lawler had him covered. So they come back the next week with a 90-minute time limit. And in that one, everybody thought, okay, Lawler's going to win the world title. And Jimmy Valiant, who wasn't even booked on the card, came in street clothes right when Lawler had just got Harley Race. He'd given him the pile driver because the referee was down. And the people knew that he had Harley at that point. And Jimmy Valiant comes in with a bottle. And he's going to roll in. And as Lawler comes up, like, what the fuck? He's going to break the bottle over his head, right? Well, as Jimmy jumped the rope that was around the ring and started to come up on the apron, his foot, or however he started to roll in the ring, his foot or knee or whatever slipped off the apron, and it caused him to boom down on the apron of the ring for a second, and that bottle started falling apart. And he had it palmed in his hand, and he was able to get the swing and hit Lawler with it. Close enough for rock and roll. People popped. But if you slow-mo the existing film, you can actually see a piece or two of the bottle falling out of his hand before he got to the head. So then he fucking not only, boom, he broke the bottle over his head. Lawler goes down, and then he comes up on his knees, and Valiant takes the broken bottle and not only rips him down the arm, but stabs him in the fucking heart. And Lawler bladed his chest and his arm, and they called an ambulance. And he went to the hospital and got stitches. It was reported in the newspaper. No charges were filed, is what the report said. But wrestler Valiant stabs Jerry Lawler. And when not only he went to the hospital and got the stitches, but he came out on TV the following Saturday morning with stitches in his chest and arm. And the people, oh my God, that's why Valiant was such a fucking hot heel when he first came in. They did, God, it may have been 13 or 14 weeks that program went. Almost weekly, almost all singles, every once in a while a tag team match. But Lawler and Valiant, it was insane. And they kept doing shit like that to keep the interest up, and fuck, people went to kill Handsome. But anyway, where were we? Oh, did it fireballs or anything like that? Yes, this is not a movie. It's not Hollywood. You don't get a second chance. It's not Memorex ever. It's fucking live when you're in front of the people. And also when you're not using movie props, they may now, they do now. We know they figured out a way to have fake barbed wire and, movie candy glass and all that stuff. But in the territory days, there was never any kind of movie prop. You were modifying existing materials. It was a real bottle. You just treated it. Or, we've talked about the various things. The real chairs, real tables, real everything. There was hopefully at some point some element of illusion or trickery to it or preparation involved. But so, yeah, sometimes those things misfire, which is why you've got to know what you're doing, and everybody's got to be on the same page and before you do it. And I would just bet that's probably, the first time they've ever used any kind of apparatus like that.
If the angle where Jerry Lawler got run over by Eddie Gilbert happened in the late 70s, if it was Jimmy Valiant or someone else, would the same thing have happened? Just based on the difference in the late 70s versus 1990, would the police have made the same thing happen where Lawler would have to come out on the show as opposed to going to the hospital and no charges are pressed?
Honestly, it would have probably been a bigger issue because civilians would have come to the station in the late 70s.
There were more viewers of the show in the late 70s.
Well, no, but right? Not only that, but also they would have come to take matters in their own hands, I think. They would have, instead of just calling the police saying, my God, Eddie Gilbert's just killed Jerry Lawler on live television, I think they would have come themselves to try to get a hold of Eddie Gilbert. And then the Channel 5 would have been calling the cops to keep the people out of the parking lot rather than the other way around.
If people showed up to get a wrestler, could Lance Russell, did he have enough presence with those wrestling fans that he could talk them down if it got to that point? Do you think?
Yes. Unless there was a physical situation happening and people didn't hear him or it was already started or whatever. No, every wrestling fan in Memphis, if Lance Russell had appeared in the parking lot or said something in the studio or whatever he said, as long as they heard him, they would have done whatever he said. But if something had happened, and they didn't know it was Lance, oh, Lance, I didn't know it was you trying to pull me off or whatever. But yeah, there was the difference, I think, in the amount of people that had smartened up and the fact that, there was less heat and the viewership was less at that point and the whole thing. The difference in 1979 or 80 and 1990 would have been that there would have been, I don't know how many actual civilians go to the TV station and either see if Lawler was dead or try to get hold of Eddie Gilbert or both. Because, it's not like that they didn't have issues to begin with, just in a lot of cases back in the 70s, just dispersing the crowd that couldn't get in Saturday morning taping because the tickets were free, but you had to have a ticket because there was a rule about how many people the TV station could allow legally in the studio. And everybody had to have, a ticket, which was sent out by the TV station with a date on it. And that way they only sent out their quota, but all the kids that lived in the neighborhood knew that if everybody who had a ticket didn't show up, they would let some extra people in at the last minute. And that's how you ended up with all those kids in there every week. But it was 6 months waiting list to get a ticket to studio wrestling from the TV station at that point. If you wrote in January, they might have something they can send you for June. And then if you can't show up that day, well, then one of the little kids gets your spot.
At what point did you realize you can go every week?
When I got into business.
Was it right away? As soon as you started taking photos, you knew you could?
No, when I got in the business as a manager.
Oh, in 82.
Mine, an 800-mile round trip to go to TV every Saturday morning from Louisville for free? Fuck.
Hey, listen, we'll get back to the SmackDown review, which we haven't finished yet, in a moment.
Well, I can. The last match was the Usos against the Brawling Brutes, and who gives a shit?
And that was SmackDown, ladies and gentlemen.